Thank you for joining us for this special media briefing on Operation Kaveri that is underway to bring back Indians stranded in Sudan. To give us a sense of the operation so far and our plans, we have the privilege of having with us Foreign Secretary Sir Shri Vinay Kwatra. Also joining us on the dais, Dr. Pradeep Rajpurohit, Joint Secretary WANA, and Shri Satish Sivan, Joint Secretary Rapid Response Cell of the Ministry of External Affairs. Sir, without further ado, let me hand over the floor to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Arindam, and good morning to all of you, and thank you for coming out this morning for this special briefing on Operation Kaveri, Government of India effort to help, assist, and bring back the stranded Indians who are stuck in the conflict zone in Sudan. First to mention that we are constantly monitoring the situation in Sudan ever since the conflict broke out there between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces, which was on April 15th. Thereafter, just to give you a flavor of the ground situation, several times ceasefires have been declared from both sides. Many of those ceasefires were not honored. Some of them were honored partially. The last ceasefire announced of 72 hours is holding by and large, but there has been feedback of some sporadic firing and fighting going on in some parts of Khartoum. Also, as a result of that, the situation on the ground remains highly volatile, with the, as I said, conflicting report of claims coming from both sides. So when we talk about Operation Kaveri, naturally there would be a degree of focus on number of Indians who are stuck in Sudan, how many have come back, how many we are planning to bring back, which is a very significant and probably the most important consideration for Government of India. But I would also suggest to you to keep in mind the ecosystem in which this exercise of assisting and bringing back the stranded Indians is taking place. And the ecosystem comprises of, as I said, highly volatile conflict zone situation in Sudan, pretty much very hard to access areas outside the Khartoum city, and I will talk about that as we go along. Our estimate is that approximately there are 3,500 Indian nationals and about 1,000 odd PIOs in Sudan. As I said, these numbers are approximate numbers, and it is our effort to put as much specificity to those numbers as we can as we go along. And some of these numbers keep fluctuating depending, or rather keep getting added depending upon who reaches out to the embassy, considering that they are all scattered, not just all over Khartoum city, but also in many parts of Sudan. The pockets of concentration are in Khartoum city and its suburbs. There are also pockets in Omdurman, Al-Fashar, Kassala, Port Sudan, etc., where many of the Indian nationals are located. What we did was that as soon as the fighting broke out in Khartoum, our embassy in Khartoum immediately alerted and reached out to as many members of the Indian community as they could. As it turns out, they pretty much reached out to almost all of them by and large. Two, issued immediate advisories, both in Khartoum city as well as in Delhi. 3. Created a network of communication within Sudan despite the challenges of the network availability, power availability to charge your network, charge your devices. Created a system, a group of network of communications through which they could, one, pass on the information about the ongoing conflict situation to the members of the community. 2, advise them suitably not to take avoidable risks. 3, also keep them informed about the efforts of Government of India underway as part of Operation Kaveri to assist them and bring them out of the areas where they were stranded. They also, embassy also initiated a online registration process, which naturally had its challenges because, as I said, the network availability and the power outages combined together create a situation that online networks sometimes don't run fully well. So far, about it is our estimate that roughly 3,400 Indian nationals have either registered online or they are in touch with the embassy. More specifically, I think 3,000 odd have already registered online, 3,100, and roughly an additional 300 are in touch with the mission. Embassy's principal thrust and Government of India's focus in this entire effort has been to advise and assist the stranded Indian nationals, advise them to remain safe and help them move to secure locations whenever feasible, whether in the middle of the night or during the day, of course, after carefully evaluating the conflict situation on the ground. Furthermore, as soon as the conflict broke out, the Ministry of External Affairs set up a 24/7 control room up on the third floor of this building. That control room continues to run 24/7 and will continue to do so till we have overcome the current situation and resolved it fully. As part of our efforts, the External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, also reached out to foreign ministers of other key partners whose nationals were also stuck in Sudan. These included foreign ministers of the US, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and last night Shankar also had a conversation with the UK foreign ministers. This is over and above his meetings with the UN Secretary General in New York on April 20th, focused exclusively on the situation in Sudan with a view to making an assessment that would help Government of India efforts to bring back the stranded Indians there. You would have seen reports, of course, that the Honorable Prime Minister last Friday chaired a high-powered meeting in which he personally reviewed and directed the officials of Government of India to take all suitable measures to assist and bring back the stranded Indians. As part of our efforts, two C-130 aircraft of Indian Air Force have been mobilized and are constantly positioned in Jeddah, have been there since 19th of April. We also set up a control room in Jeddah and a control room in Port Sudan. So we have two control rooms working along with our embassy. So there's a full triangulation of efforts between control room in Jeddah through our consulate and mission in Riyadh, through the control room team in Port Sudan, which is the northeastern coast of Sudan, and our embassy in Khartoum city. And of course, each of these three hubs are coordinating their efforts and direction to bring back the stranded Indians with the headquarters in Delhi. Two naval ships have also been positioned as part of Government of India efforts. INS Sumedha was the first one to dock, picked up roughly 300 odd Indians yesterday, brought them to Port Jeddah, and is today back in Port Sudan to fetch the next group of Indians and bring them to safe harbors. Yesterday, the other ship, INS Teg, also docked at Port Sudan, bringing, of course, our control room team and additional resources which were required for this purposes of bringing back the stranded Indians. I'm informed that third ship, INS Tarkash, has also reached Port Sudan today as part of our efforts. Now, as I mentioned in my earlier remarks, the conflict zone surrounded around the city of Khartoum. So when we started issuing advisories and started looking at the pathways to exit from the conflict zone into the safe areas, we had to pursue a land corridor of roughly 850 kilometers from Khartoum to Port Sudan. So just to orient you in terms of the scale, besides the number itself, just the sheer scale of Operation Kaveri. So if Khartoum city is the middle, 850 northeast of that is the Port Sudan, which is where, as I said, it's an area of relative safety with the ability for not only ships to dock, but also the availability of airstrip for the C-130 aircraft or other aircraft to land there. Approximate journey time, depending upon whether you are traveling in the day or through the night, can easily be between 12 to 18 hours. And add to that, there is another complexity of the availability of diesel fuel for buses. I know it sounds very trivial to talk about diesel availability and bus availability, but on the ground, these are real logistical challenges which, as part of our relentless and ongoing efforts, were addressed, resolved, and we were successfully able to bring out a large number of Indians, and numbers I can talk to you later on about it. Our mission in Khartoum worked through and through, day and night, and managed to arrange buses at different locations in the Khartoum city to mobilize people, including from the particularly conflict areas in central Khartoum, in the two districts, Amata district and Khartoum 1 and 2. When the first convoy left Khartoum city for Port Sudan, two of our embassy officials accompanied that convoy in order to ensure that there were no problems on the way, and if there were, then at least they were handled and resolved. Mission also made arrangements along with the members of the community in Port Sudan, arrangements for stay and food for the stranded Indians at one of the facilities. And most importantly, when they reached Port Sudan, full arrangements were in place to provide them with necessary documentation, mainly because being the conflict zone, all of them being in conflict zone, many of them were not in a position to carry their documentation with them. So to facilitate their documentation was a critical necessity before they could be evacuated out from there. As we speak, we have a situation that roughly in total 600 odd people, Indian nationals, have either arrived in India or are on their way. So 360 of them arrived by a charter Saudi Arabia flight yesterday night. Another 246 are being flown to Maharashtra state in a commissioned C-17 flight. We currently have approximately, give some leeway on the numbers, approximately 495 Indian nationals who are in Jeddah as of now that we speak. These numbers will either go up or come down depending upon the flows in from Port Sudan and depending upon the evacuation from Jeddah to India. Also, as we speak, there are 320 Indian nationals who are in Port Sudan currently stationed. We have more number of buses moving from Khartoum city to Port Sudan. And as I said, INS Sumedha, our ship is already there. INS Tarkash is about to dock there. We have two C-130J aircraft standing in Jeddah for more sorties later during the day. So if you look at the network bridgehead line, is from Khartoum to Port Sudan to Jeddah, Jeddah to India. And we are trying to secure each point in this entire network of movement. Khartoum city through our embassy and community, Port Sudan through embassy, through the team which flew in from Jeddah to establish control room, in Jeddah through our consulate and mission in Riyadh, and of course at headquarters in close coordination with the resident commissioners of different state governments who are here. Just to share some specifics with you, on 25th April, INS Sumedha brought 278 internationals. It's the same INS Sumedha which has gone back and redocked today. And two sorties of C-130 brought in 121 and 135 passengers respectively. Yesterday on 26th April, another batch of 297 Indians have sailed out on INS Teg, and two more sorties of C-130 to evacuate another batch of 264 Indians. We have also made arrangements for the transit accommodation in Jeddah, and as you would have seen from the media reports coming in, Honorable MOS V. Muralidharanji is in Jeddah to receive the standard Indians who are coming in from Sudan into Jeddah and then onwards from Jeddah to India. As I mentioned, we as a ministry are also in close touch and coordinating with the resident commissioners of different state governments in Delhi to ensure that their onward movement of the Indians who are returning is facilitated to the respective destinations that they want to go to. All are currently, as of now, all our officials of the mission and their family members are safe. The embassy has been providing all possible support under such difficult circumstances to the Indian nationals there, under very clear direction, leadership and review by the Honorable Prime Minister and External Affairs Minister himself. I would stop here, and if there are questions, we'll be happy to take them.
Thank you, sir. And open the floor for questions. Please introduce yourself and the organization. I'll start with Shinja.
Sir, times now. You've given a lot of figures of how many people have come by ship, by Teg. Tarkash is already there. Sumedha. You've spoken of the C-17, and it's really a kind of taking people by plane up to a certain part out of Sudan and all that. Apart from the people in Port Sudan, how many people are left in Sudan? How many Indians are left in Sudan apart from those who are already in Port Sudan?
Siddhant.
So Siddhant from Beyond. So the role Saudi Arabia played in the entire evacuation process, because we have our entire operation center in Jeddah. If you can elaborate on that.
1 second. Yeah, microphone behind you. Go ahead, Akhilesh.
So, Akhilesh Suman from Sansar TV. whether they are giving us safe corridor for evacuation.
Who's they?
They means the warring groups.
Oh,
Warring groups in Sudan, and are we taking any sort of consent that whether they will give some ceasefire when people are moving from one place to another place?
yeah, go ahead.
So, Ayush Agarwal from ANI. Sir, do we have any plans in place to evacuate citizens of other nations as well? We saw the tweet by Sri Lankan Foreign Minister. So, do we have any plans in place on that? And also, do we have any requests from other countries who are seeking India's assistance in evacuation?
Okay, take one last one. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Hi sir, Rishikesh from PTI. Do we have some kind of arrangement with RSF? As yesterday when people reached T3, they were saying that जब हम कहते थे कि हम Indians हैं तो कहते थे ठीक है आप जाओ. So do we have some kind of arrangement with RSF? And second, several people, as I understand, several people also crossed border towards South Sudan. So if you elaborate the number of how many people arrive in South Sudan.
Okay, thank you. So maybe I'll give the floor to you.
Let me just respond to the last point first because it's a straightforward answer. Our understanding is that roughly 42 Indian nationals were moved to South Sudan, essentially for evacuation purposes. It is also our understanding, again more to the question of ANI in terms of citizens of other countries. The numbers that we have is that there have been evacuation requests from other nationalities also. So from our side, we are willing to provide and offer all possible assistance to everybody who approaches us for such an assistance. Of course, this is subject to the fulfillment of all the procedures which may be required to be completed because there is a transit country involved in this case, Saudi Arabia. The third point which Siddhant you mentioned about the assistance by the Saudi authorities. Look, we have been working very closely with the government of Saudi Arabia, the leadership of Saudi Arabia, and they have been extremely helpful, supportive and cooperative in this endeavor. And we are extremely grateful to them for that because the positioning of our control room in Jeddah, providing of our assets who would bring back the stranded Indians in Jeddah, whether they are of Air Force or Navy, we have had excellent support and cooperation from the Saudi authorities for that. And as EM himself tweeted yesterday, we are extremely grateful to them for that. Srinjoy, to your question on the number of people who are still in, I would say, Khartoum city and the greater Khartoum area. Look, as I mentioned to you, the situation on the ground is very complex right now, highly volatile also, unpredictable, and both SAF and RSF, and we have been in touch with both sides, mainly because our relationship with Sudan has been such that we generally have a good relationship and good equities with all sides. So we have been in touch with all sides to ensure that the Indians who are stranded in the conflict zone, our first priority is to get them out of the conflict zone into an area of greater safety within the Khartoum city. And once they have come to the greater safety zone, then from there provide them with transport resources to be able to move them from there to 850 kilometers northeast to the port of Port Sudan. So far, I've already shared with you the numbers which are currently in Port Sudan 320. Even as we speak, there are. I don't want to give you the precise numbers, but substantial number of buses are currently on the way from Khartoum city to Port Sudan. So you will get an update on how many numbers would have left Khartoum to reach Port Sudan by this evening. But I would say if you were to total the Indian nationals who have reached back India, the Indian nationals who are in Jeddah, the Indian nationals who are in Port Sudan, area of relative safety compared to Khartoum city, the number of people who are on the way from Khartoum city to Port Sudan, I would say approximately, again this is an approximation, but the precise numbers as in when we register we'll get to know. I think we'd be touching close to about 2,000 people who have already moved out from the conflict zone. I mean 1,700 to 2,000. As I said, it would not be correct for me to give specificity to these numbers because of the conflict situation, the logistical challenges, the sheer availability of transport resources, etc. Actually put a constraint. As I said, no, you see, you have to understand when you say conflict zone, where is the conflict zone? So when you, if you bracket, let's say, X number of Indian nationals still in Khartoum city, it's not necessary that all of them may be in the conflict zone within the Khartoum city. There are other areas of Khartoum city which are, the city itself is of course volatile, but it's a question of relative safety of different locations within the city. And I think given the complexity and the nature of this assistance Operation Kaveri, I think it would be absolutely incorrect for me to even speculate that X number is. Our effort is to get every stranded Indian out of the harm's way into an area of relative safety, and then from there to Port Sudan and back here.
Thank you, sir. I'll take Manush.
Sir, as you mentioned, in fact, Government of India is in
Introduce yourself for record.
So this is Manas Pratim Bhuyan from PTI. So as you mentioned, we are in touch with all the sites in Sudan to ensure security and safety of the Indian nationals. So what is your assessment? How long the ceasefire will hold actually? I mean, when you are in touch with them, in fact. I mean, and then what is our do you have any target that in fact X number of Indians we want to just move back to the safer zones during this period?
Our target is as early as possible.
Yashi?
This is Yeshi Sehi from the New Indian Express. You've mentioned that there are about 1,000 PIOs. So are these people, do they have family back in India, or will you be hosting them if they were to be evacuated, and are some already on the way?
Andrew?
Sir, Andrew, BBC News. I was just wondering if you could speak to the security challenges that these buses face when they undertake the journey back to Port Sudan, and given that the situation is complex. Thank you.
Yes.
This is Chandrakala from ETV Bharat. So my question is, when you talk about India's role, how do you see, or what would be your comment if we talk about, do you think that India is seen as a neutral party in the Sudan crisis, basically? And you have already talked about the logistics challenges. So how's the government and the diplomats managing, basically?
Sir, okay. I didn't understand that question. Anyway, I'll sir. Yeah. Take one more after that.
आपने कहा कि एसएफ और आईएसएफ दोनों के साथ संपर्क में हैं
इंट्रोड्यूस कर ले
उमाशंकर एनडीटीवीज। आपने कहा एसएएफ और आरएसएफ दोनों के साथ संपर्क में हैं। जितने भारतीयों को निकाला गया, वो जो इलाके हैं वो क्या ज़्यादा आरएसएफ के दबदबे वाले, उनके कब्जे वाले हैं या एसएएफ के कब्जे वाले, और दोनों का रिस्पांस कैसा है? दोनों एक समान कोऑपरेट कर रहे हैं या?
You had a question. I thought you didn't. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I always get questions.
No, you didn't raise your hand. Go ahead.
Ileana, TASS News Agency. Good morning, sirs. Does India have enough facilities to help other countries in evacuation of foreign nationals? Has India had such requests from other countries, and is India ready to help other countries in evacuation of?
प्रशस्त किया जाए. I think Mr. Shailesh, you asked the question on what do you attribute the success to: hard power, soft power, and there was also a related question by Vishal from DD News on rise of India, whether this signifies and what does it mean. I think the first and foremost, what this represents is Honorable Prime Minister's relentless commitment and Government of India's absolute resolve that we will always help our own people when they are stuck in difficult situation. All the operations that we discussed, that were mentioned in the question, are manifestations of that commitment, that come what may, we will do all it requires to be done to bring them to safety if they are in conflict zone, and to offer all other kinds of assistance. That has always been from day one the direction of Honorable Prime Minister, and from day one a key line of effort and objective of the Ministry of External Affairs. I think here we are talking about safety of Indian nationals, their security, bringing them back to India safely. That is the central objective here, and we remain absolutely focused on that as directed by the Honorable Prime Minister. You talked about the name of the operation, Operation Kaveri, a question relating to that. Look, there is a mechanism for naming such operations, and you have seen in the past we have also used operation like Operation Ganga. I think it was